Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Working Out the Bugs, a Why QA is Important in Video Games panel. I'm your illustrious hostess with the mostest, Mia GinaÄ Watkins, representing Black in Gaming, our nonprofit organization. Wow, yes, thank you, more lights. Our nonprofit organization where we support Black gamers in the indie game space, in the AAA space, all over the nation and the world. We're growing, so we are growing in numbers. So we have been here this weekend. We had a panel on Friday. We had a mixer yesterday, and then today is our last event. So thank you all so much for coming. And then if you still want to check out our indie game dev showcase in the games room, we'll be there for a couple more hours. But yeah, so really excited to chat with you all here today. Should also mention that my day job is I'm a creative operations coordinator at Riot Games. So really excited to chat with you all here today and talk about quality assurance. But I'm no expert, so we're going to have our experts introduce ourselves and say what they do and all that fun jazz. So Davina, I will give it to you.
Hi, my name is Davina Mackey. I am the Director of Support Services and Operations at PlayStation Studios QA. So I'm here to tell you that QA is multifaceted. It isn't just traditional black box testing. There's so many other opportunities in the field of QA, and although you'll learn a lot about how to get into it, I'm here to showcase that there are professional services in QA, and it is career opportunity within QA.
Thank you, Davina.
Hello, everybody. I'm Wes Hendrix. I'm a quality assurance lead. My background is in media. I did radio, television, some film work, and then I kind of found myself in the video game industry about 20 years ago or something like that. So I've been doing QA the whole time. I've worked for companies like Electronic Arts, Zynga. I've most recently worked at Activision. So yeah, here to talk about QA and how great it is and how important it is.
I'm John King, currently a senior producer over at Niantic working on Pokemon Go, but I've got my start actually in QA over at LucasArts and kind of worked my way from QA into production. So I'm kind of here to kind of give you the producer appreciation of what QA currently does and how vital it truly is into the game making process. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Victor Banor. I am a QA manager at Riot Games. I work on the title Valorant. I've been at Riot for 8 years in QA. Started off on the test build and deploy team at Riot, moved over to player platform, where I was a QA manager for our desktop platform, like our Riot client, and then moved over to Valorant about 2 or 3 years ago. So currently I'm the manager for our core game, which is our characters, our maps, our modes. Here to talk to you about opportunities within QA. Just plus one point around how it's not just about black box testing. There's a lot more, to that in the space. So yeah, happy to chat.
All right, thank you. Thank you, our panel. So let's talk about what QA is and why it's a popular, I would say, entry-level job into the gaming world. If people just want to dip their toes in and find a crack into the gaming fortress that is the industry. Why is this considered a popular entry-level job? And I'm actually going to start with Wes to answer that question.
Well, basically, when you hear a QA or think of QA, what does everybody think about? People who sit in a room and play games all day, right? No. It's way more than that. Quality assurance is very important. It's part of game development. QA speaks for the user, experience. We're usually the last stop before the game goes out the door. We're the ones who are like, wait, we don't like this. This is broken, or this doesn't work that way, or I bought this and I didn't get it. QA is best when it works with cross-functional teams. Cross-functional teams is like the different disciplines in the game industry, from design, animation, sound, marketing, all that. QA works with all those disciplines at some point or another. It really depends on the company, but QA can start at the very beginning of the process. It should, in my opinion. We have a voice for the user and a voice for the experience. Sometimes we can point out issues without even touching the game. So you got to think of QA as the last final stop, speaking for the user. In terms of getting your foot in the door, because you work with so many disciplines, you can go in there and, depending on the company, work or focus on the discipline. And like my last company, Activision, we had people who worked directly with design, worked directly with animation. And some of this happens because now you can go to school for these things. I don't know about everybody else, but back when I started, there was no video game development classes. There was nothing. It was just like, here you go, here's a controller, or here's whatever, go ahead, go, kind of thing. So it's a very good place to get your foot in the door, especially if you have a focus of something on where you want to go.
Can I add that just like in your regular development life cycle, so software development life cycle, QA sits on the critical path of the project. And you want your software out there in the public with as few bugs and glitches as possible. So QA is that stopping place where all of those glitches and bugs are discovered, hopefully, and we can send it back to development, and they can make sure that those glitches and bugs are curated and corrected before it goes out the door. We've all been played a game, and maybe your character walk through a wall or something crazy like that. So those are the real, or it's supposed to play music, but the cues aren't really there, right? So QA are the ones that are making sure that those types of issues are discovered, corrected, and you guys are having a great experience.
Definitely plus one to that about being the first to experience these things before players do. The way I see it is that we are like the vanguard for the player in that experience of we're there going hey, look, what I'm playing right now is not what we meant to deliver. Because I think the way I see QA is not just about the whole go find bugs. Rather, we're validating the experience of we meant to build this, but it's currently doing this right now. Are we on the same page? Is that what we want to ship to players? And then asking that question really opens up the conversation. And then to the point around why is QA such an interesting entry level job is I think the point around is you're seeing different types of disciplines. You really get into experience. Okay, what is it like to work with designers? What is it like to work with artists? What's it like to work within audio? And also, I like audio. Do I want to go into audio? So you're being able to meet more people. You're making those relationships, those connections, and then from there you can really figure out what is it I want to do long term. And then if you want, you can swap over to a new discipline if that's kind of what you want to go. But for me so far, I've really just enjoyed being within quality assurance because I get to meet people, I get to build these relationships, and also ultimately I'm a player myself. So I really want to make sure we're shipping experiences that our players want because I'm also a player.
Also, QA is just a great way to fundamentally know how a game is built. From every facet, you're looking at it from a really unique perspective, and it was definitely helpful for me to kind of figure out that, I like the production route. So I kept looking into that and figured out how I could help with that. But because of working on projects and understanding how they would sprint plan, and how I could introduce or insert myself into there, or test case building or anything else, makes you really think about a game by breaking it down into its core principles and exactly what needs to be looked at and maybe what can be pushed to the side. It's a great starting point.
Davina, you mentioned something about bugs, right? So let's talk about that because that's bugging me. Sorry.
I'm the P0 that one.
First bug.
Have you ever found a bug that became part of your game?
I'm on the fringe of QA. I have all the professional services that support QA. Now, in our software, have we found bugs that actually get released or go into our tools? Yes. But that's not fun because we don't care about our budgeting tools and things of that nature.
I have a couple, but I'm going to take a little bit different of a slant. Not necessarily a bug. One thing about QA, as we look at the software, we look at how things work, we're also kind of looking at the overall structure of the development process. Because since we work with all different disciplines, design, everything. So my last company, when I was at Activision, we have a DEI group, and the designers came to us when they were working on the next title. And they said, "These are our characters," and they had like 14 characters. "These are their backgrounds, and this is their story," and they wanted feedback. Well, when they got to the black character, I was in it was a Zoom meeting with one of my friends, and she was also sending me messages. And I was like, And so I was like, man, I got to say something. And so the black character basically didn't have a really good storyline for us. He fit the same stereotype as the side character. It's not important that you always kind of see from the typical black guy, basically. So we basically spoke up, and I was like, this could be different. This is kind of, too stereotypical. This could be like this. You could do this. And they're like, oh. And the meeting had the CEO and the CFO and the head design, and they were like, oh, taking notes and stuff. So they spoke to us later, and what they did is they took this opportunity to do more research. They hired a black historian. They hired a black writer. They hired a black actor, Chike Okonkwo, to play him. And this character, this is for Vanguard, Call of Duty Vanguard, actually became the first black protagonist in Call of Duty history, instead of just a tiny side character. Now, they didn't promote it like they should have, as us black people at the company were like, put this out there, this is like big. They could have done that more, but every little thing that you say, if you're in the room, that's why it's important to have representation, to be in the room to speak on things. And QA oftentimes can get to be in a kickoff meeting, like, we have this new feature, or we have this new thing. So QA sometimes will be in that room. And it's important for QA to like, well, that won't really work with this other feature. And then they'll be like, oh, we didn't even think about that. That's what QA is for, to kind of overlook everything. So whether it's a bug or just something you see that doesn't seem right, when QA speaks out, sometimes that becomes part of it.
So all the fun ones I cannot tell you about. The unfun one I can tell you about is, because the game no longer exists, and nor does the company, so I'm pretty safe here. It was a real minor thing where while you were in the middle of combat, you could tap the screen and do extra damage other than the basic kind of turn-based combat. Every fourth tap would register an additional 2 taps, even though you only tapped the one time. So it was doing slightly more damage than we were anticipating with it. Where people were able to kind of overcome any sort of major obstacle if they smash the hell out of their screen. And instead of saying, let's really try to dig down and fix it, I just said, let's just let it go. It's like, at the end of the day, if they're having fun and they're tapping on it, and sure enough, like, all our analytics on those screens went up like 200%. People were like, they haven't fixed this bug yet. They're just keeping it in there. I'm like, yeah, we haven't fixed it. We'll get to it eventually.
I've got a fun one. So on Valorant, we have a character named Gecko. He's from LA. He's like just really cool guy. One of his like pets, his name is Mosh. Whenever you have like this ability out, like for whatever reason, like you can twerk. Like if you move your camera up and down, his butt twerks. So like when we got reported this, they're like, "Hey, what's going on here?" We're like, "Well, it's really funny because it's like not players like doing it in a mean way. It's more like players going, 'Hey, look at me,' and they just like start twerking, and it's like, all right, well." So I write a book for it, and it's really funny to like grow like a behavior. Agent is twerking, right? It's like behavior. Agent doesn't twerk. So puts it to the team, and the team's like, it's fine. Let's keep it in there. So it's funny. Like 6 months later, I get a message from my brother going, "Hey, I saw this on TikTok. Like, is this a bug?" And I was like, "Yeah. It's fine. But it's stuff like that where like we talk about stuff and seeing what players are reporting, but also too going, well, is it impacting the game in a negative way? No. But also it's creating experience for players. Like players are talking about this, right? So sometimes the bugs result in like memories for some people as well.
That's a great answer. Thank you. I'm going to pick on John for a bit, not because you have an amazing shirt, which I absolutely love. You guys can't see. He has a floor shirt with, represent the Cheryl Lee Ralph shirt. Let's hear it for the shirt!
Gotta calm down. The shirt will get an ego for sure.
When we were prepping for this panel, you said something that I found really interesting. You said people think QA is classical music, but it's very much like jazz. And I'd love for you to expand more on this quote. And metaphorically speaking, in the QA space, what instruments have you played?
Oh wow, okay, those are good questions. And I'm surprised that came out of me. So yeah, so like when you look at QA, it is a very structured department. Usually, you're following processes. You have to write your bugs out. You got to task those bugs out, but everything kind of follows sort of a order and pattern. But within that pattern is when you're able to explore. So like that initial pattern, that's the classical, that's the tempo, that's the notes that are meant to be played. But when you are there doing exploratory testing, whatever, that's when you're able to invoke that jazz, where you're able to identify what your superpower is. Like for me, I loved Outer World. And so that's what I would look for, because that was the first type of bug I found. Because when I started, I had no formal training, but I discovered this really cool Outer World bug in Battlefront Elite Squadron for the PSP, and that was just that open the world to me. And it was just finding that I could latch onto that and then expand on that with looking for those other beats or trying something slightly different when I could bring it to another title that I was testing. Showed me that even though like the main focus is really to be a point of vanguard, a sword and shield, whatever metaphor you'd like to apply to it, within that classical space, there's so much room for improvisation and looking for new ways of doing it. And so that's how I do it. Now, in terms of QA, what I metaphorically played, that's a good question. I would, kazoo? Does that sound?
Sure, there's some jazz kazoo songs out there. Yeah.
Like, I mean, I would think that for me, I felt at the time I would be probably like rhythm guitar of some sort, something that just trying to make sure we were maintaining the pace. And that's how I do it. And then every once in a while, I'd do a crazy solo and be like 4 miles away out of the world while everyone's all shooting each other and
Awesome. Anyone else want to add more
I can
to
add
that
to
question?
that. First of all, I love your answer. It's a great answer. Jazz. Like John Coltrane jazz, Miles Davis.
Well, I don't want to say jazz is jazz.
One thing that I want to bring up is just because you're good at a video game doesn't mean you're going to be good at QA. Mm-hmm. Just because you're a great gamer doesn't mean you're going to be good at QA. It's just like him, I didn't have any training. I was just a gamer. I just play games, supplied, and see what happens. And it's ironically because like you have to find like your special power. My special power was also going outside of it. I love the bats, or crash the game. Those are the ones where everything stops. It's like what? Who found what? And everybody stops. You got to put the report in P0, and then everything gets delayed. So you like, yeah, found that. Got Superman to fly under the world or whatever it is. So yeah, there's a lot of chance to experiment and ad hoc and do things differently outside the path because the real gamers usually have a way they play, like they're really slow or they speed runner or whatever they do. Like they want to collect everything, but when you're testing, you have to think differently than that. You want to people do the same kind of thing, like speed run. You should speed run. I would just I'm just gonna do stuff that don't make sense. I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna go back this way and I'm gonna go here. Then, hey, this is supposed to be blocked off. I could jump over it. Oh, why am I here right now? This is in the next chapter and stuff like that. So
saxophone vibes from you right now.
Well, I've previously done radio and did a DJ, so I mixed things up.
So metaphorical jazz and real jazz. So there we go. Nice. Vina or Victor?
I would say that I'm keeping the beat. So all the work that I do is about supporting QA. So if a title is coming in, I have a QA support team that's handling inventory or asset management, ensuring that the floor is configured, so environment configuration, all the hardware is in place. Or they're doing tier 1 support if someone is having an issue and our IT department can't get to it. They're working on it first. So that's one vertical. The other vertical is we need to make sure for all the work that's coming in that we have capability and capacity of work. And if we don't, my team goes out and finds vendors who can. And so I'm all over the world traveling, trying to always find vendors that are cost competitive and have the quality that we're looking for. That's vertical 2. The other one is all of our tools. So the studios are our customers. So if we need to figure out budgets and how much time we work on a title, well, my team is creating tools that support how effort tracking works, so how much time we're putting towards the title, and then how we're budgeting our effort to a title in the beginning. So there's a business systems team, and then studios want to know all the reports, and so I have a business intelligence team. So my team basically is, and then I also do DE&I. So my team is basically making sure the foundation of QA functions from all facets of how it works. I would be the drum beat that's keeping the pace of QA.
Right on.
We have some whiplash vibes going on there. So there we go. So we got drum, we got sax, we got kazoo and rhythm guitar. Victor, what are we playing?
So, and it's really cool you mentioned like finding your superpower within QA. The way I really like to work is I like to understand how systems work and also like what we're trying to build. So I'm just looking at documentation, I'm talking to engineers, I'm talking to designers, asking, okay, what's the end goal for this? And then figuring out, working backwards, well, let's break it down. Okay, now I'm in the system, I'm thinking, well, you told me, last week to do this, not doing that anymore. Like what happened there? And then also too, like just thinking through, well, before we even like start to build this, let's, talk about bugs. And we call that, in this case here, just specification testing, like, white box testing of, let's like not even like spend like, the code on this right now. Let's just talk through and think through, well, if this is going to work, how would we do it with our existing systems? Or we like need to build new systems as well. So it's just one instance where like, it's like never really like that linear of I just kind of go in, I just, go and play the game, because that's like not, that's a goal, like, should go the happy path, sure. But really trying to like, look around and figure out, well, how are these systems talk to each other, work with each other, but also too recognizing that it's like not usually like that easy. Like for example, how old is the system? Is it legacy? Is it new? Is it a refactor? Also, the word refactor, like that's scary. Like thinking through all these persons, like when I hear these like these kind of buzzwords, it just kind of triggers I should probably go talk to this person. So I'm often just trying to figure out kind of who are my key points of contact to just try to learn as much as possible about what we're doing in the process. So I don't know what part of jazz that is, but piano.
Oh,
all
yeah.
right. Oh wow.
Got the keys. All right, so we got a full band, so we're playing tonight. I'm gonna jump around a little bit here with the questions. I think you all said some pretty poignant things about the skills you need in QA, but I want to elaborate more on that and just sort of talk about what skills did you learn that did help you with your next job in QA, or maybe your next opportunity within the industry that you were working in. What impact did QA leave on you? So I know that was like two questions. So we can talk about skills first, and then if you, like, I think Davina, you mentioned that that's where you got your start. Like, what skills did you gain from QA that led you to your next job?
So before QA, I was fortunate to work in the creative space. So the internal in-sourcing team with like sound and music and dialogue and post-production, that was like my world starting off. And then my manager was a senior manager, and he just kind of like I held on to his coattail, and as he flew and soared, I flew and soared. But once I got into QA, I was already in like management. I went from a manager to a director, and that's my current role now. But I can say once I got into QA, I really learned strategy, strategy, and no more tactical work for me. So I wish I could get into the grassroots of things the way, but my day was full of meetings, full of delegation, full of PowerPoint presentations, and budget planning. But I learned all that in QA, mind you. My manager now, he's senior director of QA. We have a global team, so I have teams in Japan, teams in the UK and the US, and we're going into Malaysia and Colombia too. So, you know, QA is a business, and it requires not just sitting down playing games, but we got to figure out, like, how are we going to keep this cost competitive? How are we going to ensure that we have the right resources with the right talents? I mean, our QA division is handling release management. It's handling, now we have multiple platforms that we're on, so we got to figure out what PCs work best. And, you know, there's so many different patterns. And if you look talking about MLB, well, that's cross more like Microsoft hardware, Nintendo hardware. Like, so PlayStation is just Studios is multifaceted, and it deals with all sorts of things. You have to have a lot of skills, and QA, I think, is a curator of building those skills. I just think it's a fascinating, and anybody that wants to get into the game industry, if you start there, you can build your career and have a career pathway anywhere in the game industry.
Like, thinking about it, database management, like walking into a place and seeing how bad someone else set up their learn that.
Yikes.
Deployments, release management, lot checks, the TCRs, TRCs, you know, anything that required systematic checking of things, and just kind of doing their requirements for you know, Apple and Google and how they slightly differ, and making sure you're doing. It's so many things that you don't think about as you're doing it, because it's just kind of a part of your task. But then at the end of it, you go, wow, I understood from the concept of this game or feature, however you do it, to its implementation, production, and then release. And you've seen every portion of that in some sort of capacity because you were involved with testing it at each one of those stages. So it was really eye-opening and let me know, like, exactly how something is constructed. That's why earlier I was like, you do QA, you will learn how a game is built. If you're paying attention. If you're not paying attention, you can't. But if you're paying attention, you will learn how a game is built. Learn how to game dev balance. You name it, there was everything that kind of came from there. Because sometimes someone say, this power will do this much damage. And you have to sit there, play it safe. If it's not, then you have to figure out what's going on with it to be able to. So you're starting to understand game design as well.
One of the things that I wish is that there's this perception that QA testing is different than software QA testing. They're equivalent. The type of skills that you need to be able to break a game are the same skills you need to break a piece of software. And I just think that the industry should treat QA, game QA, equivalent to QA for software products, whatever it is.
Yes.
Preach. I've learned, echoing what everybody's saying up here, I've learned a lot, you know, in QA. We learned each discipline, production, like I said, database management, become a Jira specialist, release management. I've done a little bit of everything. I've tested from web, mobile, console, and I remember, you know, when video games were just starting. So I remember the Atari and all that type of stuff. My Atari, but yeah. So you learn a lot of skills. I think organization is one thing that I've gotten a lot better at. I'm a thinker already, and it helps to be a thinker if you're going into QA. Just like she said, it's QA is very. Sometimes there's this thought that you can just replace QA with another QA. There was a Simpsons game that EA put out years ago, and they had this level where you're going through like a factory, and then it's so funny. We used to laugh so hard at this. Anyway, they were like, there's this one section where we assumed they were game testers, and there were like these 4 like monitor TVs, and there's this monkeys just going. And I'm like, we're like, what? What did I put that in there for? Just get another monkey. Just get another QA. Just add some more QA to it. You can do that, but if you have one good QA, he can do the work of like 4 to 5 people. So it's very important. It should always be integrated into game development.
Related to software testing, going over game testing, I had some experience at Riot where initially, as I mentioned, I worked on the release team, like deploying our builds to players, and then moving over to being the quality lead for our Riot client product. It was a thing of I've never done that before. I've never really tested software before. How am I going to figure this out? And just like through my team and like just asking those questions, I was able to build up my skill set. So once I moved over to a game title, I was taking a lot of those same experiences and skills from testing software to testing the game, where the same type of things applies of having requirements. We're not just making things for ha-has and laughs. Really, there's a directive around it. What is the game missing right now? And then also what are our product requirements? What are our benchmarks that this is good? Those same things exist within being the quality lead for the Riot client, where the same types of questions were being asked. So it wasn't very different. The context was different, but the same process was the same. The same delivery mechanism was the same as well, how we release this to players. So that point around how testing software versus testing games, I got to touch on last night talking to Kermit over there about his buddy trying to go into QA, and those skills are they can go back and forth on it. Really, it's really just considering. How do you think about something? How do you deconstruct it? And also how do you put it back together again, but also calling out too. I keep saying this a lot about validation, but I think validation is a really core part of it though, is that did we build what we intended to build? Because I think as you start to make something, you can kind of get away with what the goal and purpose is, and then you can kind of lose that. So I can see QA just kind of being the tether of hey y'all, dial it back. Let's come back to our product requirements. Here's what we were supposed to build, and here's what we currently have. It's not it, but also too, if the team strays from what they've built and it turns out to be even better, that's great. That's fantastic as well. But I think just calling out that let's not really miss what our North Star is, and in our case, is try to make sure that that our player experiences are what we intend.
Nice. So I'm going to combine 2 questions. You've probably heard the phrase "it's too soon to bring in QA." Well, how soon is too soon? When is it too early, and when is it too late? How can we start thinking about how to bring QA into the forefront, as soon as the game starts?
I'll jump in here and just say that I don't think it's ever too early. In my opinion, it's all about the way I see it when you bring in a quality team onto a project is that you're trying to help build context for the team. You're trying to ground them into what's being built. So when they're early in the process of hey, we're in pre-production for something, here's what this thing is. You're getting just closer to the product. So then when we get closer to production, we're oh, here's this character that I've known since early inception. Here's kind of where they are right now. And you get, I think, just even closer to the product, and then you really start to care about it, and you become passionate about it. I think when it's too late in the process, I think the call out there just becomes, well, as a quality assurance professional, let's talk through what I can my skill set, what I can give you. Earlier on, I could give you this full suite. Right now, given the timelines we have, you're not going to get that. Okay, you're going to get a subset of that. It's still going to be really, really good, but keep in mind that it's not going to be the entire the entire catalog. So in my opinion, I really do appreciate just kind of being told about things earlier on and being hey y'all, bring the team in. And then if it's too early, let's have a conversation about kind of when is the right time, right? And then I'm going to hold you to it and be hey, remember that thing you told me 2 months ago? We're here right now. Let's bring the team in.
I'll say that there will always be someone who says it's too early for QA. There's always was going to say that. But QA should always be involved from the jump. I mentioned earlier there are kickoff meetings. Sometimes they're for features, sometimes for the new title. Basically, it's a meeting like, this is our plan, this is our design, this is what our goals are. And so if QA's in the meeting, sometimes even in the back of the room, we'll be the ones who be like, most people will be quiet. QA is the one like, but what if, or did you think about, and then like, take notes. So QA, even without touching the software, can provide a value.
Well, I was just going to say, I think Davina touched on it earlier as thinking of QA as the foundational pillar to what you're building. So the earlier you can get that foundation laid, the better your project's going to be. If you look at it from a perspective of like bringing them in when something is well within production, then what you're doing is effectively taking that matchbook, trying to jimmy it underneath the table to get some level of stability. So the sooner you can incorporate QA into your process, the better. Now, there are certain periods where you probably wouldn't. I would say maybe before a project's greenlit, maybe you're not talking to QA at that point. But like as soon as you know you're going to be building something is when you're going to want to start bringing in those pieces for those test cases and everything else. Even just spec review, and then being able to say, hey, this doesn't make sense, this doesn't make sense. Or establishing tools you might need for the testing, because you might be introducing something that hasn't been developed yet or whatever might be needed. It's really important to have that foundational thing. So I've never said it's too early, even in my production sense. I've tried not to, but sometimes I feel like, nope, let's bring it in.
Real quick, for clarification, do people know what greenlit means?
Oh, yeah.
Greenlit is basically when you take your design and you make a prototype and you throw it to the people who have money and they're like, yes, no, horrible, fix it, kind of thing. So I, as QA, have been part of testing before greenlit because one of the things they don't want to happen is for it to break. When people with the money or the super higher ups like, I can't move anymore. Then they're like, QA. So. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're rocking a demo, they'll want you early.
Hopefully games are being developed agile and not waterfall. And so if it's agile development, then you're ensuring that QA is in every sprint cycle that's happening, right? So regardless if you have just a prototype or if you have just a very early on, you're beyond or before pre-alpha, even like QA should be an integral part of what's happening in your agile development life cycle.
Yes.
Cool. So we're going to open the floor for questions. So if you would like to have a question, please come up to the mic here, and we'll have our illustrious panel answer. Hello.
Hi, I'm ready. So one of the things that's occurred to me in giving feedback and working with someone else, and I'll isolate it to working on a project. Right now it's small projects, so they're just maybe four people. And I have some experience playing the game. And it could be in music, it could be in doesn't really matter, I guess. And I know that the person that I'm working with has some intent. Victor, you talked a little bit about, hey, what are we trying to build here? And normally this works out well, but what I'd like to get exceptionally good at is being able to communicate with someone who's trying to achieve something that I'm understanding. I've gotten to that point, okay, where I can express to them in a way, we can communicate in a way where they can receive. Maybe, I or someone else is not having that experience that they intend, and navigate, those feelings of like, I want it this way or something. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So this is really about that, like maybe the relationship and connecting with people. I'd like to get exceptional at that and sort of set that that way of communicating as like a team cultural standard, right? That we work this way. So I'm sure a lot of you have sort of navigated that type of thing, and I would really love your advice in that
I could start. That's a big question. It's a great question. Communication is key in game development. Very much. Some of us, I'm not sure what you guys were doing when the pandemic hit, but we were in the middle of development when the pandemic hit. And we got a phone call like, don't come into work. We're like, what? And then like the next week, they like shipped us all this equipment to our house and our PG&E bills went up and everything. And that's when everybody started doing Zoom meetings. Now, there was a time where it was like, oh, let's cut down on the meetings. But once the pandemic hit, it seemed like Zoom meetings were all day, every day. Phone calls, Slack, chat, email. You got to find the way you're good at communicating and find the way that they're good at receiving. So sometimes, the best case scenario is face-to-face meeting if you can on a regular basis. Let's check in for 15 minutes on Tuesday and see how everything's doing. Or let's check in Thursday. Or it could be just a Slack message every other day. It could be an email. Like, this is what I found on my last report. So you just got to find which way works. And the best way to do it is really practice. There's no like magic wand or anything. You can always look into methods of communication and, try to bring that into your daily work. But you just got to do it and just find the one that works best.
I'm going to limit our answers to two answers to each question since we have a really robust line. But if anyone wants to answer that, go ahead.
I can jump in here. That's a really good question. I think to your call about how to build that culture for your team is understanding, well, does the team know each other? I think just taking a step back to figure out, well, do I know this human or not? Because I've observed that in my experience, sometimes the conversations on Slack are very transactional. Of, do you have this in for me? Yes or no. Are you in this meeting? Yes or no. But taking a step back and figure out, hey, how's your weekend? How are you doing? Having those recurring syncs, those one-on-ones, to figure out, hey, here's who I am as a person, but also figuring out here are what my goals are, right? And also what are your goals? And then also asking the question, how do you receive feedback? And just, I know it's a difficult conversation. It's awkward of I have some tough feedback to give you about this thing. I know it's a little weird, but I'm just going to say it. Stop me if I'm going on too long. And really figuring out how they want to receive that information from you. Because I think to hold back and not give them that, though, does put the project at risk. Because ultimately, you're trying to deliver a quality product to your customers, to your players. But having those discussions is going to be really helpful. But to Wes's point, it's not going to be perfect the first time. It might be awkward, but then as you get more reps on it, you're going to get better and better at doing it. And then I think it becomes second nature to just ask more questions than I am just giving those statements of well, have we considered doing it this way, or what about this? And then that way because you're asking those questions, the person is answering them, but then they may have that aha moment of, I really should think about doing it a certain way. That's the long-term influence, though, is that over time you'll see that, but it's not going to be something overnight for sure. But yeah.
Hi, I guess I had two questions, if that's fine.
Yes. Yeah.
Sure, thanks. All right, first question is, what would you say are some of the major differences between QA testing for in a regular software company versus in games, or at least when it comes, beyond I guess more of the manual or black box testing, what would be some the major differences?
I'll have one of you guys answer that question.
Usually methodology. So if you're going to be doing game development mobile, really agile, and most console development tries to go agile. Software development traditionally follows a waterfall method, and it's exactly how it sounds. It's systematically laying things linearly and then hitting those dates and specifically timetables. So you might notice certain software you use doesn't really update. Maybe they update every 6 months, that type of thing, because they're systematically going through each process and they'll pump it out. And traditionally, in that instance, sometimes what you'll get is we'll be like, hey, we weren't able to hit that date. It's okay. We'll just put that on the next release. And so usually you just move it on down. With agile development, usually you're moving in quicker sprints. Sprints are the time that you want to use to be able to schedule how long you're working. A sprint can be 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, however you view it. But the idea is you're moving really fast. You're trying to rapidly check. You're trying to do as quickly as you can to get from day 1 to day 10 of your work week to get something in and test it and ready to go out. So I'd say that's mainly the main differences. But again, to Davina's point, in terms of how you're testing and the tools you use, very similar. It's just the method in which you're going to be doing it. It's going to be slightly delayed or slightly faster depending.
Now, if we could just get the industry to pay game testers the way they pay software testers.
Preach. Preach.
What's your second question?
Second question is, in the context of game testing, is there anything to keep in mind when it comes to like maybe doing it for like a smaller scale, maybe like a one-person indie game? I mean, I've been thinking of like possibly unit integration tests, but it's kind of like really hard when a lot of it is going to be something like where like it's heavily based on like user input or like really moving around. Do you all have any tips for how to go about that?
You're going to hate this one, but play your work. Like, I know it sounds weird, but make sure that you're playing through the stuff that you're coding and going, systematically making sure, to Victor's point, it's functioning the way that you intend it to function. But if you're a one-man band, play your work. If you have friends that you're willing to share your work with, pull them on, have them test. Say, hey, just play. I just want to kind of see what happens. And if they encounter a bug, ask them what happened. They get a better idea of systematically doing that. I could understand at a smaller scale, like doing unit tests and things like that might be a little bit more complicated, but it is a great way to give yourself at least some safeguards around functionality to make sure that it's behaving as you intend it, even at that scale. That would be my recommendation.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Oh, next question. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you guys all for doing this. This is vitally important. I think we spent the last 3 days testing games over in the indie area, and there's not enough of them in here, I don't think, hearing this. But I have a million questions, but I want to keep this one. Kind of piggybacks off of what he was saying. We have a very obvious QA realm, which is like finding bugs, things that are really, hard line, out of bounds, that type of thing, collision detection. But there's also another realm of QA. I don't think it's really talked about enough because it's more subjective. And that's like game feel, how it plays, from the user experience. Like, how do you navigate that in AAA space? I'd like to hear more about that specifically.
Well, I had a good answer to you, but then you said AAA space, and I was like, oh.
To me, anything's AAA beyond solo dev or small team. So.
Well, you hopefully the company you work for takes feedback from a variety of ways, especially from QA, because we are the experts. They look at us as the experts. So, like I said, we're the last stop before the real audience. So we share some of the same thoughts. Like, I don't like this power up. It doesn't make any sense. It's like I get killed in 5 seconds trying to use it, kind of thing. So hopefully there's avenues to make that feedback. Kind of also adding to his question. Sometimes it's important to have people who do not know what they're doing look at your game. Mm-hmm. Don't always just get a gamer who plays everything. Oh, I play everything. Let's say my favorite genre at the beginning was sports. So when they threw me in like MMO or a shooter, I was like, all right, or like rock bands, like whatever. But I found stuff the person who always plays that game didn't find. So you got to really think outside the box and find ways to give proper feedback. AAA space is a little bit harder, they're a little bit more rigid, but you got to work with your team and find ways. Even if you're talking to the designer, mention something, hey, blah 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 blah, the animation, like, oh, sometimes those things, like, oh, I didn't think about that. Sometimes those things work.
Hello. First off, shout out to my fellow QA guys. I'm also a senior QA analyst at Pixelberry Studios. So, thanks for, advocating for us. Just wanted to ask a real quick question. What are your thoughts on using AI for, test automation, stuff like that? Because that's something that my company is looking into. So I want to get your thoughts on it real fast.
It's happening.
It's happening.
At a very fast pace.
Yep.
That's all.
I mean, yeah, I know TestField was pushing this AI thing on us and automation, so something we're exploring. So yeah, it's been an adventure. That's all I gotta say. But
I look at it. I want to look at it as a tool because game development has changed a lot since I started.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm showing my age in game development, but people used to write out bugs. Literally, had a piece of paper and we had a VCR, recording bugs. So the tools have changed a lot. When automation hit, we were like, oh no! But then it got to a point. It's like, oh, automation can do those simple checks for us. Cool. All right, that's done. Next I can work on this. And so hopefully AI comes in like that. AI's, it's going to touch everything. There's no way about it. But hopefully it's incorporated like a tool. I mean, I think every time technology advances, jobs change. But we want to keep on. We don't make games for computers. We make games for humans. So humans should be involved in every aspect, in my opinion.
Yep, I agree. Thank you very much.
I have a question for you, Davina. So you said that in PlayStation you have like distributed teams across like Malaysia, Colombia. So I'm curious. So I work as a web developer. We have QA in India. It's even despite that, it's fairly simple to work with them. Like they can record a video with something goes wrong on the website. But like with a video game, what kind of challenges do you run into trying to do distributed QA, and what processes or tools do you have in place to overcome those challenges?
Well, that's a really good question. So the pandemic showed that you can work from home, have teams distributed across the world, and still do things like belong to a platform like PlayStation 5. So it's doable. It just depends on leadership being nimble enough. It's all about your communication and it's all about your collaboration tools. And there's also limitations on some of the studios and what type of tools they're using and the InfoSec approved. Those are the biggest challenges that we have in-house. So if you can get past the changing of face-to-face work to being able to work on collaboration tools like Zoom and Teams and Slack, and you don't have a lot of challenges with latency because of your teams being time zones and that sort of thing, and then your studios, how they like to work. Those are like all of the biggest challenges that we have, and then InfoSec would be the other, right? So ensuring that the collaboration tools that your studios are using, InfoSec has approved for them to be utilized outside of the natural network that you're in, especially if you're working with them.
I also call it too, like taking stock as to what challenges either your team or like your developers or like your external team are experiencing. Like asking the question of like, hey, is your build infrastructure having issues, right? Like for example, call it of like network speed. Like is that causing slowdowns in delivery of either tests being completed or like builds being delivered? And understand like, okay, well, if this is happening from a build standpoint, well, what can we do to like try to unblock them, right? Because we're really serious about trying to use distributed teams, is giving that team the support they need to like make it work. And then even if those things are working well, having like those core processes in place for, well, what are your expectations for like the vendor team, right? Like what should they be giving you on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to really help you show that like that it's working, right? Like what are the metrics you're trying to drive towards to understand that like what we're paying for is actually what we're getting, and like you're trying to see the full picture of like that experience as well.
Sorry, if I could ask a second question.
I was at the end of the question, we'll go from the back, but we'll be here after this.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Zakayla. It's nice to meet you all. I just want to say thank you for coming in and sharing your experience in the industry. I think it's very important, and I appreciate it because I like hearing experience from people that look like me. I guess my question is, I missed out on a lot of opportunities with like internships and trying to get into the industry because of COVID time. And I found that a lot of companies now for QA are requiring you to have experience already. So do you have any suggestions on how to get around that, or know any companies that don't require experience to get into QA?
anything you can do to get experience helps. Depends on the company. There's now different types of accreditation going on, like ISTQB. Look that up. You can take classes and take a test. Then some people were like, "Hey, you have that? Come aboard." To me, it's not necessary, but it doesn't hurt. So taking classes, anything that can help with your experience.
Any skills you can get with just basic understanding of how a computer is connected to the internet, right? If you know how to take a Ethernet and stick it in, or get those try and find ways. Even taking a course at a junior college, right, that teaches those skills. You have just those very basic skills when you go into that interview. Sometimes they're going to ask you if you have any technical experience. Everything else will teach you.
And for example, I got into QA actually through contract QA. It was a contract to hire. Any opportunity, you see something along those lines, and I did it way later in life too. So before I got into game space, I actually was a concierge. So I tell people where the bathroom was and how to get to Pier 39 and all that. So definitely not applicable skills, not necessarily doesn't seem like it's one-to-one transferable skills, but it worked in terms of being a people person and trying to do that. But seeing that contract opportunity, I took a chance at it. Didn't know if it was going to last 6 months. Now I'm on my 15th year in the industry, so I've been able to stick around. So I'd say if you see an opportunity like that, I definitely say, hey, put your hat in the ring. Why not?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello. Are there any tips or resources you recommend for a QA tester to grow? I've been doing QA testing for 2.5 years, and I find myself looking and testing in the same way. How do you expand your thinking to find bugs outside of the box?
So I shifted. So like I said, I like finding those out of world bugs. So that was the very first thing I landed on. But then I realized there was this whole world of structured testing and understanding Nintendo lot checks and Sony and Xbox versions of those same checks where they were very systematic, push a button exactly at 5 seconds here, or disconnect the controller and run down the hallway to see what happens to the game after it's disconnected. And that actually helped me expand my skill set besides just looking for that one real out of world bugs. Oh, I found that. And then the next one was entering in %n into any sort of name input. That's one of my favorite ones to do. People still don't fix that right off the rip, it seems like. So you're injecting some stuff there. But that was another thing. So I just started kind of learning other ways of how to be able to support QA. So that's how I grew my skill set.
I would say also check social media. Social media has been a help and a hinder, and a pain for QA, because they'll be the first we found this bug, and it will go viral, and we'll be like, we reported it, but they didn't want to fix it. So I would say look at social media, look at reports on the internet of other bugs people found, then try to find it in the game you're playing or something similar. There's a whole bunch of variety of bugs you can find, from out of world to sound issues to purchasing issues. Go through and find out what all these top ones are, and then try them. Just like he was saying, there's technical requirements for most of the companies. Nintendo's really rough. Nintendo, there's Sony, and there's Xbox, and there's TRCs and TCRs and all that stuff. And the big list is if your game does this, we'll fail you. If your game does this, it's a point. You can go through all those. Try to do those type of things. That's a good way of learning outside.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for coming.